Hello, everyone. Welcome. Chief just stepped out for a brief second. We're going to start as soon as he gets back. Chief, I've admitted everyone to the waiting room and I have started recording the meeting, just so you are aware. I'm going to be muting everyone. I'm going to ask people to stay on mute until we do get to the question and answer period. I'm going to wait 1 or 2 more minutes and let people continue to join in. I'll kind of open up the meeting. I'll walk through the agenda that we have tonight, and we can make sure we run. I anticipate this meeting being about an hour. If the chief's presentation is a little quicker, then if he flies through it, maybe a little shorter. If we have a lot of questions, maybe a little longer, but we'll be about an hour, and we'll get started in just a minute or so. But thank you all for joining us tonight. Okay, just admitting a few more people. All right, so we are going to get started. I'll continue admitting people, but we are going to go ahead and start the meeting. Welcome, everyone. Tonight is a HNA sponsored event for everyone to learn a little bit more about what is on the ballot upcoming Tuesday, December 13th. Okay, that's Tuesday, December 13th is the actual election. Voting hours and voting for that is going to be at the fire building from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. at 25 South Central Avenue Firehouse. That's the firehouse on Central Ave, right by the Fountain Diner. Voting is from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. There are no absentee ballots. So if you do wish to vote, you do need to make sure that you are there in person. Also on the ballot is an election for the one seat on the Hartsdale Fire Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners is a 5-person board. It is basically responsible for overseeing and administering the fire department. It is mildly unclear at this point as to whether that's going to be a contested election or not. We know that the incumbent, Tom McGuire, has submitted his petitions, and there is potentially one other candidate. As soon as we have more information about the clarity there, I will certainly make sure that HNA puts that out on all of our ways of communicating. So with that, just a quick reminder, if you are not getting HNA emails, please make sure to subscribe. You can subscribe on our website, hartsdaleneighbors.org. You can ask to be added by sending an email to info@hartsdaleneighbors.org. And those are the 2 best ways to subscribe. Make sure you are on those emails. Additionally, Facebook, the Hartsdale Neighbors Association page, we post updates there. All of our major newsletters are linked there. And then there's some smaller updates that we sometimes do post. So make sure to like us or subscribe to us on Facebook. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I am joined tonight, really appreciate the participation of the fire department in this outreach. I'm joined by Chief Ray Maseda. Chief's going to be joining us and walking through a presentation about what is exactly on the ballot, what the fire department is asking for, why they are asking for it. After his presentation, we have a couple of questions that we've already received from the community, things that we've heard from a variety of people. And then after that, we will open it up to Q&A from the audience. When we get to that point, if you would like to ask a question, please use the Zoom functionality to raise your hand, and I will call on people to answer those questions. We will hold questions during Chief's presentation. We'll give him a chance to kind of run through it uninterrupted and go from there. So with that, Chief, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time. And I will, maybe if you could just introduce yourself and get started.
All right, thanks, Eric. I really appreciate it. My name's Ray Maseda. I'm the Hartsdale Fire Chief. I'm joined tonight by our Secretary Treasurer, Sharon Spagnoli, and 2 of our Board of Commissioners members, Anthony Frasca and Jason Muldoon. So on the ballot next Tuesday is going to be a proposition for a bond issue for $490,000 that is for the purchase of a property directly behind the existing firehouse on Central Avenue. And what the purpose of this presentation is to give a lot more information in terms of like what surrounds that purchase, the reasons for it, costs, planning, and business plan in terms of what we're looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to start walking through the presentation. Eric, is that coming up on your screen okay?
Perfect. So we can still see you on the right-hand side, and we can see the presentation on the majority of the screen. So I think we're looking good.
Terrific. All right, so we're going to get started. So the highlights and really the meat and potatoes of this proposition is that it's a bond for $490,000 for 5 years. Right now, interest rates are running for municipal bonds between 3 and 4%. That 490 is an all-in number, including interest and other expenses that we'll detail as we go along. The reason for the acquiring the property is really that for in the future, we're looking to allow for a safe new building that is out of the flood zone for the firehouse. We're going to go into where the flood zone is, how it's affected the firehouse, and how it affects our operations a little later on. The proposal we feel is the most cost-effective option given the current options that are on the market and how the market is behaving now. At the end of the day, we expect most residents are going to see less than $20 increase in your tax bill. That's a net increase, and that includes the reduction that we posted for 2023 in terms of the assessed rate. And this proposal essentially preserves efficient and safe emergency services in the Hartsdale community. So in a real brief overview of what we do, I wanted to just go over what the functions of the fire department are and really how we operate. At our core, we mitigate emergency incidents, right? Those are fires, explosions, motor vehicle accidents, search and rescue activities, both on land and water, chemical hazardous materials responses, and that can range from anything.
Where's the volume?
That can range from anything from chlorine to mercury to a host of other materials. Emergency medical response, along with the Greenberg Police Department EMS division, electrical and gas emergencies, flooding, blizzards, natural hazards. All of these things are things that fall under the umbrella of emergency incident mitigation for the fire department. We provide that 24 hours a day, 365 days a year with staff that are on site all the time. Some of the specialized services that we also provide are rescue services, building impacts, emergency stabilization for buildings that get run into or have suffered some sort of collapse, rescues at heights using rope systems such as the Springbrook Parkway or the Metro North lines, rescues below ground such as in trenches and in oil tanks. We also perform rescues in floodwaters, and we also do search and rescue both in land and water. We also provide a variety of services for community risk reduction. We do community education classes. We do CPR instruction. We do quite a bit of outreach that we'll talk about. Along with that, we perform the fire inspections in the fire district, along with the Greenberg Building Department. And we also inspect and test the fire hydrants along with the DPW Water Department. How we do this is a culture that basically goes into training. It's a multidisciplinary approach. Our 5 broad areas in terms of what we train on is firefighting and property conservation, medical training, special rescue services, building code enforcement, and policy and compliance. Every firefighter in the Hartsdale Fire District trains every day on a variety of topics. And all of this training probably totals several hundred hours a year per person. So who we are is basically we serve a population just under 13,000. Those are the numbers from the American Community Survey, which is unfortunately the 2020 census numbers were not available. But that's a population increase from the last survey. We also protect 2.86 billion in property values. And how the breakdown is something along the lines of, at this point, just over 2,000 incidents. We've contacted about 3,000 people during our community risk reduction program. We've performed about 340 fire inspections throughout the district. We also test and document about 434 fire hydrants in our fire district, and our staff training hours are just under 8,400 hours. So we're here tonight, and we're here to talk about really the firehouse and why should we even keep it? What's the purpose of having two firehouses? What's the purpose of having, Commissioner Bob Monaco signed on. He's with us tonight as well. So why are we even keeping this firehouse? Why do we even need two firehouses in the fire district? What's the purpose of all of this? Well, in good fire protection design, community design, emergency services providing, both your homeowners insurance companies, commercial insurance companies, and national firefighting standards really dictate that they want the first unit arriving at your door after you pick up 911 within a 4-minute drive. Okay, so if you have an emergency at your home and you are calling 911, the national standards that we try to live to is that we're there within 4 minutes after we get the call, right? The rest of the units, if they're more needed, have up to 8 minutes to arrive as a group. We do that just about 90% of the time, given where we're located, the amount of units that we have, right? And the length of travel that they have. So fire department and firehouse placement is really critical in terms of how we deliver services to the community. In that, traffic patterns and traffic congestion are really important considerations. I think anybody who's traveled down West Hartsdale Avenue at any given rush hour can spend up to 15 minutes waiting just to get down to Four Corners. And that's another aspect of what we're talking about. As our community gets older, it's getting bigger, it's getting more dense. Our population our building population is becoming larger and more vertical. So what that means is that there's just more people, and as there's more people, there's more traffic, and it takes us longer to get from place to place. Couple of other design considerations. Firehouse locations really need to be as close as possible to where people are concentrated, right? And I'll show you a map in a little while as to what that looks like for us in the Hartsdale community. And also, how good are the locations that are near incidents, right? If there's more people and it's more dense, it kind of goes along the same lines that there's going to be more incidents in certain locations. Not always the case, but certainly that's what our data shows us. Bottom line, the more risk we have, the closer a firehouse should be to the properties. So really what we're looking for is the best possible location that we can get for these firehouses. So what we've prepared here is a heat map that talks about 5 years of incident data that we've had in the fire department. The neon green is less concentrated, yellow is medium concentration, and red is the highest concentration of incidents. And these are just fire department incidents over the past 5 years, right? And if you take a look at the map, you'll see that the red areas are concentrated mostly along East Hartsdale Avenue, Four Corners, and along the Central Avenue corridor, right? If you look right around the map where it's kind of dead center where it says Hartsdale, that little box there signifies where the firehouse is on Central Avenue. So you can see by its location, it's right really in the heart of where it needs to be. The other issue that you'll see is this map kind of details what a 4-minute response time looks like based upon where the firehouses are in Hartsdale. So in the light blue area, that's the area that pertains to the West Hartsdale Firehouse up at 300 West Hartsdale. And then the firehouse that we're talking about tonight is the one that's in the light yellow area. And that's the one that's at Four Corners, 25 South Central Avenue. These areas represent our deployment and the areas where we can best get to the people that we need to serve in the most efficient way possible. So what does the firehouse look like today, and why are we even talking about this? So a couple of things. This is a picture of the building as it was built back in 1931, right? What you'll see is basically as the firehouse stands today, right? But notice the size of the fire truck and notice that it's able to pull out of the firehouse. And I just want you to keep that in mind while we look through the next couple of slides.
Chief, that's you in the tie, right?
I wish I was that old. So, you know, that's earned. That's an earned picture right there. But this is the building as it stands today. And what I wanted to show you by this picture is that this picture shows you that we've maintained the building. The building is in good working order. It looks perfectly fine, right? You can even see the new sidewalks that the planning department's project was to widen the sidewalks on Central Avenue. Those were just done last year. So the building has been maintained and the building is 91 years old, but underneath we're having some problems. Some of the current conditions that we have in the basement are true structural problems. You'll see on the picture of the right, one of the main structural beams with concrete cracks going down the length of the beam. On the left-hand side, you'll see concrete that's chipped away from those supporting beams. This comes from a combination of age, water breaking apart the concrete, and the weight of the fire trucks. We have the same problem on the next slide with pictures of the walls. Anytime you have a vertical wall that's a supporting wall in a basement, and you have a crack that goes from top to bottom, that's a sign that you have a structural issue in the building. And we have these structural issues. Is the building going to fall down tomorrow? Absolutely not, right? We're maintaining these buildings. We're making sure that they're still serviceable. There's no danger at this point. But what these are indicators that we need to start planning for the future. The biggest issue that we have with this building is its position inside the flood zone. What you'll see here is a picture of the town of Greenberg's computerized mapping system called their GIS system. That's a geographic information system. And in that system, you can overlay several different features of the community. The one that's pictured here is an overlay of the flood zones that FEMA has designated. All right, FEMA being the Federal Emergency Management Administration. You'll see that in this pink zone that's on the lower right-hand corner of the map, the building that is in the green box, which is the property that we currently own, is 100% inside the flood zone, right? This is partially what's causing some of what we think is what's causing the structural issues that we're having in the building, right? For essential infrastructure buildings like firehouses, this is not a good thing, right? By proposing this purchase that we're talking about tonight, that gives us the opportunity to move that building back in the property and get it out of the flood zone, which is reducing the threat to the building, right? And thereby allowing us to respond during emergencies, you know, unimpeded by problems with the building. And then the other issue that we have is if you look at the building outline, which is in tan, there's a very small strip of green. That strip of green is the existing driveway, so to speak, from Central Avenue to the back of the building. that is about 9 feet wide. So because of the width, we actually can't get fire trucks behind the building without driving onto other people's properties, specifically the diner and Sabavea. And that's how we access the back of the building right now, and that's how we build in. That could, right now, they're very amenable to helping us out and allowing us to drive through their property, but that could change at any time, and that's another issue that we're trying to address with this project. So how serious is this? Well, last year, we all remember in September, we had quite a bit of flooding around East Hartsdale Avenue, around Central Avenue. We were not spared. Our firehouse received quite a bit of water inside the building. I'm going to play a small video that shows a little bit of the flooding. This is not flooding that was, this is flooding before it reached its highest point. And what you're seeing there is a video out of the front door of the firehouse, and you can see water is already coming up to the edge of the sidewalk. And at this point, it's actually already coming in our basement. We've got overflow coming from the storm drains, right? And the water level at that point was actually lower than at its highest point. At its highest point, it was already coming into the firehouse itself on the apparatus floor, which is where we keep the trucks. So this for us was a critical situation. By the way, the damage that was caused to the buildings, we didn't have to do anything other than some electrical repairs, and I'll show you what that was, but it ended up being about $20,000 in damage to the building from the flooding, and we got off easy. The next slide shows a video of some of the results of that water coming in the building. So what you're seeing here is a video of the electrical panels that are the main electrical panels for the building. And what you'll see there is water actually pouring out of the electrical panels during this flooding event. Typically what happens is that if we have a flooding event, we actually have water that comes in from not only the top, but actually from the foundation walls. And in this case, it actually found its way into the electrical panels. This is obviously an unsafe situation. This has been fixed since then. So I don't want to be alarmist, but this is an example of the issues that we're dealing with in this project. The third issue is just an issue of age. Remember back to when I showed you the original picture of the firehouse. The original picture of the firehouse shows the size of the fire bay, or what we call the apparatus bay, where we keep the fire trucks. And the fire engine was probably halfway up the door or so, right? That was 91 years ago. Nowadays, fire trucks are bigger. They weigh more, they're wider, and they're taller. And what we're showing here is that at this point, we have literally inches of space between the ceiling and the top of the fire trucks and the sides of the doors and the trucks. Are we able to get fire trucks in and out of there today? Yes, absolutely. Is this ideal? Far from it. It's just another indicator that we need to start planning for the future and planning for the eventual replacement of this building. So, what's our plan? Our plan, after a lot of consideration, is to ask you to fund our acquisition of the property directly to the rear of us. And what that does is that gives us the opportunity to move the building eventually out of the flood zone and create a safer building. At the same time, what we want to do is actively seek grant funding to fund that project, right? We have a couple of opportunities that are available to us right now. One of them is the bipartisan infrastructure law that we recently sat down with Representative Mondaire Jones at Greenberg Town Hall, and who was discussing some of the infrastructure money that's out there, and also money from the Federal Emergency Management Agency that's available for critical infrastructure projects in flood zones. So we've been fairly successful recently in getting grant money for different projects. Just this year, between disaster recovery and a training grant that we got from FEMA, we received $800,000. We're looking to hopefully move that forward and do something with the building that we're proposing tonight. Again, the bond proposal for tonight is not for a new firehouse. This is to acquire the property that's behind the firehouse for a future project, but it will allow us to do a project that is out of the flood zone, safer, and better, what we think is better for the community.
And Ray, not to interrupt, but that
So,
phase two would also
what are
involve
the
a vote,
details on the
correct?
property? I'm going to give you a picture of the property in a bit, but really what we're talking about is it's a 0.4 acre property that has the former the workshop of a former roofing contractor on site. Sale price of the property is going to be $400,000. The appraised value of the property was $585 last February, and its assessed value is $668. The reason I include those numbers is that we're roughly getting the property for 2/3 market value, somewhere around there. All right. Additionally, over the past 2 years, the owner has completed an environmental remediation. He has Department of Environmental Conservation approval with that project, and the project is considered clean. So what that means for us is that there's very few surprises on a future building project on a property like this. And kind of what we discussed before is that a big purpose of this project is that it allows us access to the firehouse without having to go through other properties, right? Tomorrow, somebody could put up a fence and we're locked out of the back of that building. And that's just a reality that we have to deal with right now. The other thing is that it also gives us room so that when we eventually do build that firehouse, the existing residential neighborhood on South Washington Avenue that's behind our firehouse isn't negatively impacted with overwhelming structure. And that's something that we're sensitive to for the neighborhood. And the big issue here is that it removes that structure, that firehouse from that flood zone, allows us to work properly. So what you're seeing here is the addition of the proposed property to the back of our existing property. The green box is our existing property. The yellow box would be the addition of the property on 22 South Washington Avenue. And that blue box that's kind of drawn in there is a conceptual size, let's say, of a future firehouse. And what you'll see is along the bottom right corner of that picture, there's that FEMA zone, that flood zone that we're talking about. If we're able to push the building back, we're able to actually take that building, push it all the way back, allow for parking, allow for drainage, allow for all the things that you need to do when you're building a building, right? And give us access from South Washington Avenue. And it doesn't necessarily have to be for fire trucks, right? We could access, with a larger driveway, we could access the firehouse from Central Avenue and not impact the address, the houses on South Washington Avenue negatively with large trucks. But what this does is that this gives us the room in order to build a better, safer, dry firehouse. So let's look at some comparable properties and what they cost and what some of the options that are available to us. Right next door at the old Chase Bank building, which is now Coin Exchange, that was sold last year. That property was sold for $1.4 million, right? Our project is $490,000. The Shake Shack property in 2018, right, was $1.8 million. Now that's with the construction of a building. They already own the property. But just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, in terms of comparables. The other comparable, which was sold this year, was the former Montage building in front of Webb Field, which is now Verizon. their purchase and remodel of that building was $2.7 million. So to give you an idea of like what commercial property on Central Avenue costs, these are the costs that we're talking about. And we feel that the purchase of the 22 South Washington property adjacent to ours at 490 is a good value for the community. We also looked for unimproved lots that were on the market. There are no unimproved lots on the market on Central Avenue or in the area that would be acceptable. And there's also no current land swap opportunities. We have sought those out in the past, specifically with Chase next door and several other properties during the past several years, and none of them have been successful. So the big question is, what's this going to cost down the road, right? And there's, in terms of market research of like the cost of firehouses can cost anywhere from $22 million all the way down to $2 million. It all depends on what you're trying to build. So what are we trying to build, right? We're trying to build what's considered a satellite station, right? That is a fire station that doesn't contain administrative offices. It doesn't contain meeting rooms. It doesn't contain duplicate equipment that we already have in our main station, right? Basically, what we're talking about is fire trucks, associated functional areas, crew quarters, and something big enough to hold the fire trucks that we have. We estimate right now on the current site that might be a $3 to $4 million project, and that includes demolition of existing building, some eventual environmental remediation, and the eventual construction of a new building. These aren't hard numbers; these are very preliminary numbers, but they're based on the needs assessment that we did. So, great. We're talking about, roughly $500,000. What does that mean for people who don't really know the fire department and how we operate? Let me tell you a little bit about our financial condition and how we operate. Financially, we rarely issue long-term debt. We only have one bond that's outstanding. That's from the renovation projects of the existing firehouses from 15 years ago. We have 5 years left on that bond, and we're paying approximately $480,000 per year. Just keep that number in mind for a moment. Any other equipment, anything that we buy, we save for, right? So we've recently, over the past 5 years, we've replaced a ladder truck and 2 fire engines. There was no debt incurred at all for those. We saved up for those and we paid for them in cash. And that consists of the bulk of our firefighting fleet. And, one of the things that we always want to make sure is that there's always a plan B. Our first plan A for funding would be grant money. If we're not able, what we could plan to do is after we finish paying the bond off in 2027, we could then start saving up for this firehouse project, right? Our ability to save up at that point would mean that there would be no debt on the project and no increase in taxes. What's the bond itself look like? The bond is proposed at $490,000, right? The sale price of the property is $400,000. The additional $90,000 includes interest, environmental engineering, the deposit that we paid, the legal fees, and the bond fees. The term of the bond would be 5 years. The tax rate increase is about 19.5 cents per thousand of assessed value, right? And the net increase for most property owners is going to be about $20 a year in the fire district bill. That's roughly what we're looking at. That includes what we estimate was like an $8 decrease from 2022 to 2023 for about a $550,000 house. What does our budget look like? And this is a budget comparison over 5 years, and how our budget is broken down. The bottom blue part is the actual number that is taxed upon in the district. You can see that from 2019 all the way to the right to 2022, we kept a relatively flat budget. We did have some increases this year on the taxable amount for this coming 2023. That was due to replacing staff, and that was also due to just increasing costs. The numbers that are on top of that are numbers that don't impact the tax number, right? Your actual tax bill. You'll see that 2023 looks significantly taller at the top there. That includes a $500,000 grant that we received from FEMA. We have to reflect that in the budget that way, but that is not money that is tax impacted at all. The other numbers that you'll see there are unexpected balance. In other words, we had a balance left over from the year prior that we're going to use towards the next year. So whenever we can, we scrimp and save, and we try to make sure that we're very judicious in how we spend our money, how we spend your money, and we make sure that anything that we can, we carry over to the next year to reduce the tax burden. For a fire district, we have very limited ways of raising money, unlike the town or any other municipality, really. We don't charge fees. We don't charge, sales tax or anything else like that. The bulk of our revenue is property taxes, followed by grant money. So we're doing the best that we can year, and that's why you see like a flat taxable budget for 4 years prior. So what this shows is that 2019 is on the right, 2023 is on the left. What this really means is that the taxable amounts have actually gone down, which you should either see a small reduction in your fire tax or a very moderate increase in the fire tax over the past 5 years. That has to do with assessables, the rise of assessables in the district, and also the amount of building that's going on, and the more buildings that are coming into the district. So by doing all of that, for most homeowners, you should have seen a very, very moderate increase over the past 5 years, or you should have seen a small decrease specifically over the past 2 years. So this was a slide that came out of our budget presentation this year. If you had a $50,000 home, right, your taxes in 2022 for fire tax were about $29.50. In 2023, your tax would be $29.42, so that's about an $8 decrease. If you added $20 for this bond issue, you'd be at $29.62. And this is just a chart that would rate some comparisons if your assessed value went up by 2.5%, 5%, kind of what you would expect your 2023 bill to be. In that 2023 column, you would see an increase of $20 over that or so. So with that, I just want to thank Eric Zinger and the Hartsdale Neighbors Association for being so kind as to host this meeting. I hope that it's been informative, and I'm here for any questions that you have.
Thanks, Chief. If you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen, that'd be great, just so people can see a little bit better.
I'm not getting any audio.
Are you guys not hearing me? Test. No?
I
Test?
can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you, Eric.
I can hear you.
Ray, I think everyone can hear me but you. Test. Still no, Ray? Can you guys hear me? Can anyone else who's in the meeting?
I can hear you.
I can
Yeah,
hear you.
Eric.
If everybody can hear me but you, let me take a look and see if I have a. How about now?
Can you hear me? Test, test.
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that presentation. That presentation that everyone saw will be posted on the Hartsdale Fire website. We'll be linking to it as well. So if you want to review it after the fact, you certainly can. I think that presentation answered a lot of questions that we had. I know I've received a lot of questions from the community, so I'm going to start with 2 or 3 questions that I know have been received. If you would like to ask a question, after that, we're going to open it up to everyone in the room. I know a lot of people are here. I'm sure you have questions. If you would like to ask a question, please use the Zoom functionality to raise your hand. You can go into the reactions at the bottom and raise your hand. So if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will go ahead and start there. So Chief, a couple of questions just that we've kind of received from the community. The first is regarding the impact to the community during the long-term plan. How long do you envision that we would be without a firehouse on Central Avenue during this period? How will you maintain service during that period? And what should people be aware of in terms of the impact in between construction and go forward?
I mean, that's a great question. If we're able to build a building far enough back, we should be able to keep the current firehouse in service during most of the construction. We could probably almost keep it open the entire time. There is going to be a point where we anticipate that the current building would be demolished, which may make access difficult, but we might be able to get around that by either going out the back or going around and going through one of the other parking lots. So what we hope is that there'll be a very minimal or no disruption to services while we're there. If we do need to move out, the fire units that are stationed in that firehouse will come up to the 300 West Hartsdale Avenue firehouse. So there will be a little bit of an increased response time, but there would be no reduction in terms of how many companies or how many people are actually available.
Great. The next question that a lot of people have asked is, hypothetically, if the bond fails, does the department have a plan B or a plan C at this time, or is that a situation that would be addressed after the vote?
So, you know, what we're trying to accomplish with the vote, right, is to give us enough room in order to maintain services, create a single story firehouse that doesn't impact the properties that are around it, and give access. And take it out of the flood zone, most importantly. If we need to move things back, I'm not exactly sure, because we're not at that point in the process, how much of an impact that would be on the project. But we're hopeful that, you know, the community sees the value in the project and does approve it.
Another question that came up was, you know, you mentioned that we're getting such a great deal on this property, significantly below market value. Why do you think that is? What are we getting a favor? What's the reason that we're able to get this property at such a discounted rate? Are you concerned about people basically raised the question? I know you mentioned of environmental mediation and potential unexpected costs that would be in place.
Yeah, and those are great questions. So the owner of the property they changed the zoning on the property to revert back to a residential property. So the current owner was grandfathered in as a commercial property, but only for the purposes of a roofing company. So unless he was able to actually sell the property to a roofing company, he had to revert it back to either residential or a public safety purpose like ours. My understanding is that he did try to sell that. He did try to sell it to developers. He tried to sell it to roofing companies. Apparently, it wasn't able to do that. And then he came to us knowing that we had an acceptable use for the property.
Great, thank you. And the last question I have before I open it up to the public, and if you do, I see one person with a hand up. If anyone else does want to ask a question after that, I certainly have more questions I can ask, but I do want to give people an opportunity. So please use the Zoom functionality to raise your hand if you would like to ask a question. So Chief, obviously, many people are concerned about the economy right now. They're concerned about property values. They're concerned about property taxes. I know Hartsdale specifically has seen really big increases in assessments, which is raising our town taxes, raising our portion of our county taxes, all those kinds of things. With this potential looming increase in cost, what has the fire department done to achieve cost efficiencies? And what plans, if any, what with this plan, are there any additional cost efficiencies that would result from this plan? Or talk to us about how the fire district is planning to kind of offset the expected costs.
So ultimately, if we're able to pay for the building through grant money, that's a tremendous boost, right? What we're talking about is either a partial or a full payment for an infrastructure project that's several $1 million that hopefully would benefit the community for decades to come. The efficiency offsets is really about maintaining the efficiency of the fire department, right? Right now, as I showed in a couple of the slides, the deployment of the firehouses in the district is almost optimal. We've gotten very fortunate about that in terms of how long it takes us in order to get from the firehouse to whatever incident address we really need to. If we were to close the firehouse, let's say, especially if we close the Central Avenue firehouse, the bulk of our incidents and the bulk of our residents are going to experience increased times, which in our business it could have substantial negative effects both in life and in property. So the hope is that for a small upfront cost, that gives us the breathing room to kind of make a larger project feasible and have it funded by grant monies.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to individual questions now. I see 4 hands up. It's going to be Artie, Lewis, the Weinbergs, and then Chris Broda. So Artie, I see you've unmuted yourself. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Chief, for this meeting today. It's really helpful. We love being here. A few questions I had is, you had mentioned, Chief, that it's going to be a future project. Just wondered if you can clarify that a little bit. And the South Washington exit that's right by the roofing company, it's a tight turn. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned that, you can't take the turn where you are currently without getting onto other people's property. So it's going to be tough for you guys to do it there as well, right? And last point I wanted to ask is, were there any current, with the current structural issues you have right now at the firehouse, was there any sort of engineering reviews or reports that you guys have had done for the property to help mitigate the water filtration?
Okay, thank you for your question. So yeah, just to address the turn question that you have on South Washington. Yeah, South Washington is a tight street. It's one of our oldest streets. And for our trucks, it's doable, but it's definitely not optimal. My preference would be to have a large enough area where trucks could pull into from Central Avenue and then back into whatever the firehouse that is. That's currently not available to us because of the fact that the firehouse as it exists is literally within a handful of feet of Central Avenue. So if we're back into the firehouse right now, we actually have to pull out into Central Avenue. We did that for years. It's really dangerous. There's been a lot of times where the fire trucks have almost gotten hit. Personnel have almost been hit. It's almost caused accidents. So we, back about 15 years ago, we did put a rear entry door into the firehouse. And that's how we get around through other people's properties. That way we don't have to back in through Central Avenue. In this proposed new project, what I would expect to happen is we would actually pull into the front of the driveway for the firehouse and then back into it, hopefully staying off of Central Avenue entirely. So that's kind of the plan. The South Washington entrance would be something that staff cars, that kind of thing, where we could get to the back of the building. And it would probably only be used by fire apparatus if there was some sort of, maybe it was a flooding issue or something like that where we had actually had to use that. But I don't anticipate using that on a regular basis for fire trucks. In terms of the engineering report, engineering reports were done during the last renovation 15 years ago. They did look at the structural integrity of the property. This property was considered safe. Since then, pictures of the cracks that I showed you have appeared. We're having those assessed now.
Next up is going to be Louis Pollitt. Louis, I think you've unmuted. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Thank you very much, Chief, for the presentation. The firehouse on East Hartsdale Avenue was bonded about 15 years, was constructed about 15 years ago. The fire district raised $5 million to construct the firehouse. Help me reconcile the cost of the firehouse from 15 years ago to the $3 to $4 million that you're now anticipating a new firehouse would cost on Central Avenue.
Sure, Mr. Powell. Thank you for your question. So the last bond issue actually covered an addition on the 300 West Hartsdale firehouse, a renovation of the existing structure at 300 West Hartsdale, and a interior renovation of Central Avenue. So it was kind of a 3-for-1 project, right? There was an expansion up here. There was a renovation of the existing area up here at 300 West Hartsdale. And then there was an interior remodeling of Central Avenue in order to make it gender neutral in terms of the crew quarters, and just kind of some interior updates. The actual structure of the building, other than the rear door being installed, was not touched, right? It was painted, it was updated, refreshed in terms of kind of remodeling it for career firefighters. But the Central Avenue project was actually the much smaller part of the whole thing. So it didn't touch the core problems that we have, the first of which being that it's in a flood zone. You can't change that unless you tear it down and move it. The second thing that it didn't touch was just being able to fit modern apparatus, because it's just of an age that it just can't accommodate that anymore. So I get the question. You don't want to spend good money after bad. The intention of the project 15 years ago was to really just give it a minor remodel, with the idea that sometime down the road we'd have to do that. With some of the structure issues that have appeared since that time, it's prompted us to say, hey, and the flooding issues that we're all aware of on Central Avenue, that's really prompted us to say, okay, listen, it's time to start planning for the future.
I mean, my question was less on how that money was used back then, for the Central Avenue firehouse, but more to understand, what was the cost of the firehouse built on East Hartsdale Avenue back 15 years ago, and versus the $3 to $4 million cost that you've estimated to build a new firehouse on Central Avenue.
So we didn't build a firehouse. Like I said, we remodeled the existing.
No, but the one on East Hartsdale. Oh, okay. What about the one on East Hartsdale Avenue? I thought that was new.
No, we also remodeled. That was the existing firehouse that we also remodeled. And then there was an addition placed on the back.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
You got
it.
Okay, the next question is from Leslie Levine and Ed Weinberg. Guys, you are unmuted. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks for your time this evening, Chief. I have just a very general question about the voting here and why this is a December vote rather than when general voting is in November. Aren't you, I always see this as something that comes at an off time. And if there's a reason that you're looking to get less voters out, because you'd certainly have more in November. I'm always curious about that. I think so few people know about this relative to all the lead up to the November elections. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, and thank you for your question. So fire district election dates are actually governed by town law. So we have no discretion in terms of when those votes have to be. It's the second Tuesday in December for every fire district in the state of New York. That's in, I forget exactly what section. I think it's like around section 175, something like that, of town law. But that's what governs when the votes are. So in terms of the administration of the fire department, we don't have any discretion at all in terms of when the vote is.
Okay, thank you. That makes no.
Sorry, Leslie, I hit the wrong button there. If you could unmute yourself, we can't hear you now.
Yep.
And sorry,
Okay.
my apologies.
My husband Ed has a question.
Chief, I had two questions. One, further down Central Avenue, I guess after that kitchenware place,
Mhm.
side there's been that huge vacant fenced in lot for it's got to be 10, 15 years or longer.
Yep.
You know, did the fire department district look at that property and see whether it's available?
So the property is owned by the Reverso family. It is not currently on the market and it's not currently for sale.
Mhm. And with regard to the roofing building,
Mhm.
so you're going to own that for like 5 years, presumably before you work on a new firehouse. Are you budgeting? Obviously, you're budgeting for maintaining that property. And have you? Has someone looked at? I trust someone's looked at the environmental reports. Why would someone, have prospectively done like a detailed environmental report? And did that include, any contamination under the foundation of that building?
So when we entered into the contract for the property, we retained an environmental engineer just because of the fact that we didn't want any surprises. Our environmental engineer's assessment was that basically the environmental contamination that was in the property was very minimal, and it was very common for a site that's been like a commercial site like that for that kind of use since the 1940s. During the course of the process, it's up to the owner to make sure that the environmental remediation is done, so that they can't pass along basically a contaminated property. We wanted to make sure that that property's soils were suitable for building, which is why we retained our own engineer. By the time that whole process was done, nothing major other than some metals that were kind of consistent with roofing materials were found. It was found a little bit deeper, so it was a little more extensive than they originally thought. And there was some slight oil and gas contamination that was easily cleaned. Bottom line, basically, my engineer was not overly concerned with the levels that he saw. There were several sample test borings done during that process to identify what areas had to be cleaned up. The soils engineer that we used was very satisfied with the process, and ultimately that led to the Department of Environmental Conservation signing off on it without any restrictions. So in terms of like how these things go, from my understanding, it was pretty typical of a commercial site of that age and of that use. And since it's all been remediated, there's, we have a lot of information and data and pictures and test borings and everything that we need, so that moving forward, when we decide to build, we can do it with a clean slate.
And what about the, maintaining the existing building for 5 years? It's going to be vacant. It's got to be heated, maintained.
Right. I mean, the building itself is a pretty simple workshop type building. There's not a lot of cost to it. We don't anticipate occupying it full time or anything like that. So we anticipate the maintenance costs in terms of fuel and energy to be minimal. In terms of maintaining the property, we plan on having fire district staff maintain the property. So, there shouldn't be any additional cost on that.
And last question, if for some reason the bond issue is not approved, is the deposit refundable?
I don't know. Sharon says yes. So our
Yeah.
secretary treasurer says yes.
That's part of the contract. That if the bond fails, then the deposit gets reimbursed to the fire district.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next question is from Chris Broda. Chris, if you go ahead and unmute and ask your question, please.
Good evening, everyone, and good evening, Chief. Thank you for that very good presentation. I understand very deeply about the need for improving the facilities you have. It's an old building, doesn't meet the current needs for a proper modern fire department. I was involved with 6 years ago with trying to get the town to revitalize Four Corners and to have the district rezone. Clearly, the town has not yet done much as far as that's concerned, but they have done stormwater studies with proposed mitigation that would prevent the flooding that's happening in the surrounding properties. But also what is lacking that was in our plan is an understanding of the wider district and how many buildings there would be and the proper types of buildings to be there, which would have all been mixed use with a lot of apartments. Unfortunately, your location is right in the middle of the most prime real estate that is it's closest to the corners. It would be the next building in from the corners. So if your bond doesn't make it, would you be willing to work with the citizens of Hartsdale to press the town to be more proactive in creating that master plan that they've taken 6 years to not do? There was a lot of support from the HMA, from the neighborhood association, and the neighbors themselves who had a petition for it. Would you be willing to work with all of us to push the town to make that? We had actually thought that we would move the fire district down to the Safavia location, and that we would then use the building, which I happen to like very much, and I would be heartbroken to see it torn down. But that would have made a great restaurant or a brew pub as part of the development. So would you be willing? We're very disappointed that this is not going forward. We also are going to not be getting the $10 million or more of revenue that we showed would be generated by buildings developed there. Would you be willing to work with us to petition the town to move forward with doing a master plan so that we can have a proper location for your firehouse and have it be dovetailed properly instead of a firehouse in the middle of a bunch of apartment buildings?
Okay, so thank you for my question. So I'm gonna try to summarize basically what the issues are. For critical infrastructure like police, fire, water department, that kind of stuff, water stations, having them in flood zones is not good planning, right? The Safavia property, if that's where you're asking us to go, is actually deeper into the flood zone versus into the, out of the flood zone. So I think that and in any sort of planning project like that, I think that the emergency services aspect of it, and in terms of putting that in a safe place where we can still service the community is really going to be the focus of what it is. That being said, regardless of whether this is up or down, we're always willing to work with the community in terms of like what we think is best for the community. Revitalization, better buildings, bigger buildings, all that kind of stuff. That's all great for the fire department as well as for the community. And as long as we're taken care of in an adequate fashion, I think that we would be willing to work with it. But since that doesn't seem to be happening right now, the fire district has to plan for taking care of the community in the way that we know best. And that's why we would ask really for your support in terms of purchasing this property.
I'd just like to follow up with that and clarify that part of the plan for Four Corners was to help to mitigate the flood zone so that we wouldn't be having the kind of flooding, because just as a firehouse shouldn't be located, neither should shops and apartments be located where they're going to get flooded. So part of the remit for the town was that they had to come up with a stormwater plan that was going to mitigate that, and they've made some inroads towards that. They've spent a few $100,000 of our taxpayer money in getting some advice from a planning company to come up with plans. But just so you know that this FOB, we've looked at the flood zones, we've looked at those issues, and there is a solution to it. There is a way to work around that, and we would not be asking that you would be placed in a flood zone.
Listen, I welcome being part of that process. I think it's an important project, and I think it would be good for the community.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. Next question is going to be from Katie McGee. Katie, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Hi,
And I
good
see,
evening.
sorry, Katie, I see two more questions. I see Patrice and Liz. We're at 9:07 right now. So after that, I am going to kind of wrap up the meeting there. If anyone does have any additional questions that they either think of later on or want to ask, I'm sure at the end, Chief will provide a way for people to contact you. And, you can certainly ask a question. This is not the end of the discussion here, but we'll have Katie, Patrice, and Liz, and then we'll just kind of wrap up. So Katie, sorry to interrupt, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. Good evening. I'm wondering, do you know how much money is paid now by the property owner of the property you want to buy to school taxes? And am I correct that once the fire department if they buy it, that property is going to be taken off the tax rolls in terms of your tax exempt?
Right. So I'm not familiar exactly with what the school tax is on that property. But yeah, you are correct. Once the fire department, fire district buys it, it does come off the tax roll.
Okay. So, yeah, that would be good to know how much the school district would be losing from you purchasing
I'll be
that.
able to tell you in a second. Hold on.
Thanks. All right, while he's looking that up, can you explain why the voting hours are so limited, 3 p.m. to 9? Is that correct?
Correct. So in the fire district law, the state mandates actually hours between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. And then the fire district can extend them. So we've doubled them and extended them from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. Typically, we're doing what we can in terms of accommodating the voters.
That does not accommodate anyone who's working like a 4 to 12 shift or a 3 to 11 anywhere. But I don't know. Do you understand why the law is only 6 to 9 p.m.?
No, I don't. That's
Yeah.
just, I have to follow it. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't try to figure out what happens in Albany sometimes.
I think Katie raises an excellent point, and unfortunately, it's probably too late now for this election. But I think one of the consistent themes I've heard is that if there is let's say this passes and there's a phase 2, we know there's going to be a second referendum if there's a bond for that decision and things like that. That increased ability for like a full days of voting hours is definitely something that I think and we'll have the time at that point to plan for. That's definitely a consistent feedback. So and I think, Katie, to answer your question, at a $650,000 assessment with a 15.97 rate, that's about 10K in school taxes, give or take.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Do I have time for one more question, or you want to go on because of other people waiting?
Is it going to be quick?
I wanted to know what the response was from Congressman Jones, right? You said they looked into grants and whether, do you have any more specifics about you are eligible, you're not, what, like it sounded very vague about what kind of grant money you might have.
Yeah, it is a little vague right now. We're going to be identifying that. The thing is that not all of the programs from the bipartisan infrastructure bill have rolled out yet. So we really don't know exactly what's in and what's out. When we met with them, and we met with specifically, it was the Department of Transportation folks, they were a little vague. So I can't give you more detail right now. What I can tell you is that as those things become available, we're going to be very aggressive in terms of trying to identify what we can go after and go after it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Katie. Next question is from Patrice. Patrice, I see you're unmuted, so please go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, Chief, thank you. Two questions related to, are we looking at things in a silo tonight? One is just a follow-up to the question about Four Corners. Let's say we get this new station, it's high and dry, it has no cracks, it's modern. You're not going to be able to service anybody on East Hartsdale Avenue if we don't solve the flooding at Four Corners. And so the station might be great, but your ability to serve the East Hartsdale neighborhood and anywhere even in Manor Woods, because you have to get through Four Corners to get to Manor Woods, that'll be doomed if the flooding's not solved in the greater area. And it's more of a comment probably than a question, but you can respond to it in a minute.
Let's stick to questions, please.
Yeah. So if the chief wants to, I want him to respond. My question is more about the payments for this. We pay a lot of taxes for the fire department, and in the coming years, the ratio of what we pay in town versus fire taxes, if we keep going at the rate we're at, we're going to be paying more in fire taxes than we pay for our town taxes. Seems very out of sync for me, given this is one set of services that we get. And sounds like it's going to be even worse in the coming year. So what I want to know about is the bigger picture, I guess. Salary, I know, is one of our biggest expenses in terms of the fire taxes we pay. And that drives an awful lot. So what are you doing to, incentivize people who are high paid to retire early? What are you doing to negotiate, better contracts so that the taxpayers here don't keep seeing things spiral? We're paying a lot. It seems like we continue to pay more and more. This would be an extra fee on top of everything that we're doing.
Yeah, I understand. So, I mean, a couple of idiosyncrasies to fire district taxes. Fire district taxes are an all-in organization, right? Like you're paying for everything from here to from soup to nuts, basically, for the fire department. because of the fact that we don't have a lot of ways to make money per se, there's limited offsets. Every year we do the best that we can to sit down and sharpen our pencils and make sure that, we go line by line in terms of the budget. And we try to make sure that we're either getting the maximum amount of value that we can for the dollars that we spend, or we try to identify, grant monies or anything else that we can use. In terms of salaries and contractual issues, those are issues that are negotiated by the Board of Commissioners. You're welcome to come to any meeting and you can ask them any questions that you like, and they can answer them for you.
The next meeting is December 14th at 7:30 p.m. If anyone would like to attend, I know I'll probably be there. So December 14th is the next meeting. Thank you, Chief. Next question is going to be the final question, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. We'll wrap up after this question just with some very, very brief just information about the voting and things like that. But Liz, if you could go ahead, I see you're unmuted. If you could go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yeah, so just really quick, thank you for the presentation. I've had a lot of open questions over the years about the fire district in general that were answered tonight, so appreciate that. And then in terms of the proposal, it looks like the planned fire station is still relatively close to the flood zone. So I'm wondering, is there any concern that in coming years the flood zone is going to move or expand, and then we're going to be in the same situation with the new fire station?
I don't have a good answer for that yet. I mean, I do know, and as you've heard tonight, I know that they're actively looking at flooding mitigation issues in that area. I can't tell you where they are yet because I know they're still under study and under development. As we get more information on that, we'll have to adjust the plan to make sure that it's okay. I hope that answers your question. I just want to make one quick correction to my comments. On one of the slides, you said that the 490 included all fees and interest. There is going to be a little bit of an increase because apparently the 490 doesn't include the interest. We couldn't calculate that until we get the interest rate. So there will be a slight correction on that. As soon as we get that correction, I'll forward that over to you as soon as I can.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, so I want to thank everyone who attended tonight. I want to especially thank Chief Maseda for an excellent presentation and a really well delivered plan. As a reminder, the voting is December 13th at the fire station on South Central Ave, 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. There is no absentee ballots. 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. You must be present to vote. There is the issue of the bond as well as an open seat for the Hartsdale Fire Commissioners. At this time, we're still clarifying how many people will be on the ballot. Of course, write-in candidates are allowed as well. So if you do have any questions about that, you can direct them. If you'd like to direct them to the HNA, you can direct them to info@hartsdaleneighbors.org. If you'd like to direct them to the fire department, you can direct them to info@hartsdalefire.org. You can send them to both and see if you get the same answer. But that's really it. So please, if you do have any questions about this, if there's a question that you didn't have tonight, please reach out and ask. We want to make as much information as possible available to people before the vote. The slides that the chief presented will be available online, and we'll make sure people know how to find them. I think we're also going to make sure, I know one person asked me about the environmental study on the proposed property. So we're going to work on making that available. Chief, before we wrap up, any final words?
No, I just wanted, first of all, I wanted to thank you, Eric, and the Hartsdale Neighbors Association for moderating this. You guys have a terrific reach, and it's really good to get out into the community and talk about these issues. If there's any questions that you have of us for this project or anything else, we're always available. Please info@hartsdalefire.org. You can always call the fire department. 949-2325 is our non-emergency number. We're here 24 hours a day, and we're here for you. So whatever it is that you need, let us know. Thanks a lot for tonight.
Thanks, Chief. And then just a couple other quick pieces of information. Stay tuned for information from Hartsdale Neighbors about the town board primary and the town council primary. Those are going to be in June, but district leaders for a convention are looking to endorse a candidate. Looks like we are going to have contested elections in June. And then there is one item in January. Katie, are you still with us? If you could maybe just give a quick note just about the school referendum that's being proposed, what that is, and maybe where people can get more information.
Sure. There's a January 17th vote on whether or not to, well, it's for an energy performance contract that the school district wants to engage in with Con Ed to get energy savings at no cost to the taxpayers. But if we vote yes on it, then we can get 10% state aid and to go toward the contract. So more information can be found on the Greenberg Central School District website. Greenberg.
Do you know if there are absentee ballots for that or no?
I believe there are, but
Okay.
But it will be on the website. Every vote that they have, they usually do absentee ballots. So that's what I'm basing my
So
answer
the
on.
date is January 17th for that. If you will not be able to vote in person, please get an absentee ballot. That's something I think, the information that we've gotten, to me, makes it seem like a no-brainer for us. Just basically the ability to receive 10% of the subsidy from the state. So just trying to make sure we get as much state aid as possible there. And then one last item. I know for those of you, there is the Operation Candy Cane. That is coming up, I believe, is it this December 10th? So that is this Saturday, Operation Candy Cane, December 10th. The fire district will be coming around between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. The schedule is on their website, hartsdalefire.org. It's a great opportunity. I know my kids always love it. I'm sure I'll see some of the firefighters and some of the people on the call here. So Operation Candy Cane, December 10th for the Hartsdale Fire Department, starting at the train station at 9 and going all across. For your specific neighborhood or location, check out hartsdalefire.org. It's right on the website, just below the information about the vote.
And Eric, I just wanted to say, that Operation Candy Cane is actually coordinated by one of the firefighters who's a Hartsdale resident, and it's all people that come in on their off time in order to do it. And we're happy that we're ecstatic that they get out in the community and see everybody. So it's one of our favorite things of the year. So great to kudos to Frank Musarafidi and the firefighters union for putting that together. They do a great job every year with it.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. We do appreciate your time. We know everyone's very busy. If you find that someone else that you know who's not in attendance might find this interesting, we're definitely going to post the entire video on the website, and would encourage everyone to make sure, let your neighbors know about the vote, let them know about the video. We want to make sure as many people know about this and have access to the information as possible. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight.